So the Tuckster is back, and he is better than ever, unfiltered, on Twitter.com. Now, obviously, you don't need me to tell you that. There's a good chance that you are one of the upwards of 75 million people who have at least viewed Tucker's tweet, though a lot of people are incorrectly quoting that he has gotten 35 million views on his first episode, or 75 million views plus on his first episode. That's not true. These are impressions that the tweet has gotten, so it has shown up in 75 million people's feeds. That's it. The actual views are probably at this point closer to 17 million. It was 16 and a half or so last I checked earlier today. Maybe it'll be closer to 20 by this evening when I upload this. And so that's still really, really good compared to what he would have been getting on cable. So we don't need to overstate the scale of Tucker's accomplishment here. We don't need to be inaccurate. I want to be accurate on this because you compare that to his Fox show, where he got 4 million viewers every night, 20 million in the first day. That's pretty darn good. Now, I don't know if he's going to do a daily show. I hope he does. Because what he put out last night, he didn't do the full, 60 minutes of Fox where you come in and he does his monologue, and then he has a couple of guests on, and there's commercial breaks in between, what do they call it, the A block and the B block and the C block and all that. He didn't do that. He just put out his monologue like he would on a normal day, and it was just like watching the Tucker monologue. Now, personally, if I ever watched Tucker, it really was just for that. If he has someone who he wants to interview, I'm sure he'll do that in addition, and he'll put out interviews too, but those are separate things. So if he puts out a Tucker monologue every day on Twitter that's like 10 to 15 minutes long, I mean, Tucker's back and better than ever. He's already said things in this first day that he would have never said on Fox. He implied, not so subtly, that Lindsey Graham, U.S. Senator from the state of South Carolina, is a homo-type sexual. This is one of those things that everyone knows, everyone thinks, but on Fox, you're not allowed to bring it up. It's not something you say. You don't call Lindsey Graham, who is a loyal Fox guest who comes on multiple times a day, probably, on whatever show will have him, and you don't make fun of him being gay. Tucker also flat out said what we all know to be true, that Ukraine bombed that dam yesterday, and I'm still having trouble with the name. It's probably going to take me a couple weeks. Nova Kakhovka? Was that what it was? You see, if I had the letters in front of me, I could read it off the paper, but I never take notes or anything. And then, just for good measure at the end, he threw in bits about vaccines, 9/11, the JFK assassination, and of course UFOs. And I think that's actually where I want to take today's conversation. I have not mentioned the News Nation report from last night about this UFO whistleblower. This is a guy who I guess was an Air Force intelligence officer who was working as part of Congress's probe into UFOs. I think Marco Rubio was the guy in the Senate who was pushing this, having a congressional probe into the question of UFOs and what evidence the government has. And this guy apparently was a part of that task force, and he reported directly to Congress. And he had someone, he claims, now this is all hearsay, he claims that someone came to him. So a whistleblower came to this whistleblower and said, there's stuff that you're not being shown, and the Pentagon is not showing the task force everything. There's actually another secret task force that has all the real dirt on UFOs. And so this guy now is coming out and not revealing who his source is, and he's sort of a second-hand whistleblower, which I find very odd. He even admits he has not seen this evidence himself, but he had multiple people come to him and say, hey, this definitely exists, and somebody needs to speak out about it. Now, considering he was not given any evidence and he just had multiple people come forward and try and encourage him to do this and, hey, please be our voice on the outside world, it almost sounds to me like this is a, not a poison well strategy, but think back to Prohibition. What the government, the federal government, used to do in order to discover where speakeasies were. The federal government would get their own liquor to sell to these bootleggers to distribute out to the speakeasies. But the liquor would be poisoned. And so when there was a sudden outbreak in a whole big room of people who were poisoned all at once, the police would come in and they would know, oh, okay, so this was a speakeasy. All of you people were drinking illegal liquor, and now we've caught you. Whether you're dead or alive at this point doesn't really matter to us. The problem's dealt with. We figured out where people were drinking alcohol. And it's kind of the same idea here, where you have people inside the government who will spread misinformation internally in hopes to discover people who are willing to spread leaks. So you give someone fake information, and then when that fake information gets leaked to the press, you know who the leaker was. Now, this guy's coming out at himself. He's done this publicly. And so, it's not like the government's looking for him. They know exactly where he is. They know who he is. But perhaps some of the people who were talking to him, his actual sources, perhaps some of them were being fed misinformation. Because the common denominator, or the common thread here, is that there is nobody who's speaking out has actually seen any hard evidence. This guy is not Bob Lazar coming out and saying, hey, I was at Area 51, I saw these craft, I can describe them, I was inside them, I was a scientist working on this, and I just think the public should know. This guy's not giving us any of that. What he's saying is the government has UFOs. They have the bodies of the pilots who are found on board of these UFOs. They've been studying the UFOs to try and develop and reverse engineer them to improve our own weaponry. But I have not personally seen any of this. I've not seen evidence of it. I've not seen pictures or videos. I've just been told by multiple people. And yet the media, at least some of the media, not all the media, and this gets into what Tucker said, they are giving him a bit of a hearing. More of a hearing and more attention, I think, than Bob Lazar got. Or you could argue maybe it's about the same, because Bob Lazar did get some coverage, in the local papers. We do know Bob Lazar's name, so it's not like he was completely suppressed. He was just smeared and discredited, and we were all told, oh, you're not supposed to listen to guys like that because, he's a fraud. With this guy, we're getting either favorable treatment from, News Nation, which is the smallest, mainstream cable network. They're trying to be what CNN used to be. They want to come and say, hey, we're the straight shooters. We're just the straight news guys. We're not about all the opinion stuff. That's, they're trying to be what CNN's reputation used to be. And so they have a big interview with this guy. They take him seriously. And as Tucker points out, the rest of the media largely ignored him. They didn't talk about him in the New York Times or the Washington Post. But that, to me, does not mean that this story is unapproved by folks on the inside. I'm quite torn, actually, because on the one hand, I would like to believe this. I'd like to believe this guy. I think it would be cool if if there were UFOs that the government had, and that these secrets, existed to be revealed. Obviously I don't like that the government was keeping it secret from us, but if they're keeping it secret from us, that means that there's something to be revealed. I would like that to be true. But I just feel like there's been too much coming out lately. They've been admitting too much. They've been letting too much come out. And that there's something, I don't know what, but there's something deeper going on here. There is some reason why the regime is letting us finally believe, without being considered crazy, that they have UFOs, that they have alien bodies, and that all of this is totally real, and you're not a crazy kook for saying it. I and everybody else grew up in a time when, if you believe this stuff, you were considered crazy. Now, I didn't think that was crazy. I was always kind of into this stuff. I liked the idea. I think most people like the idea that, we're not alone in the universe. But never in a million years would I think that the government's just going to come out and tell us one day. It just doesn't make sense. Now, Tucker seems pretty convinced by this guy. He thinks that they are trying to, that the evidence would suggest that the government doesn't like what this guy's saying, that they don't want what he's saying to get out there, and that, the media is giving him the cold shoulder and hoping that, the story just fades away. Which, maybe that's not maybe in the 24-hour news cycle, that's not a bad bet on the Pentagon's part. Maybe if everyone just stays radio silent, this guy, he'll come and he'll go, and he'll just be another, UFO kook. Or maybe they will have to smear him. Maybe they'll have to ruin him financially. Maybe they'll have to audit him, destroy him financially. Maybe they'll get to that point. It's very convenient that this seemingly very credible guy has no evidence, has nothing concrete, doesn't really have significant details. That, to me, just gives me a feeling that he's leading us in the wrong direction. After all, they've been very secretive about this stuff for decades. Why would we not expect them to sprinkle in some misleading stuff if information is starting to trickle out? If for no other reason than to discredit, the true leaks. That's another reason why you try and leak misinformation if you are a government. If you know that you have a leaking problem and that there are a lot of leaks coming out that are correct, you want to leak things that are false to discredit the idea of leaks in general, so people are less likely to believe what they see getting reported, that is anonymously sourced. You want a bunch of contradictory stuff coming out, which, to be fair, I think in the alien front, we haven't had a bunch of contradictory information coming out. But I'm very much in wait-and-see mode. So, with that said, I will see you folks back here tomorrow.